Some funerals pass quietly, like a whisper carried off by the wind. Others linger, not because of who is gone, but because of what is left behind. This one was never meant to be remembered, and yet, no one who stood at Eleanor's grave that day would ever forget what happened. Not because of the prayers, not because of the tears, but because of the dog. He didn't bark. He didn't whimper. He just watched. Too still. Too silent. And when the truth clawed its way to the surface, it wasn't the living who revealed it. It was him. The dog sat at the edge of the graveyard, its posture tense as it stared at the small group gathered for the funeral. Its coat, once shiny and healthy, now seemed matted with grief, as if it too had been affected by the loss of its beloved owner. The air was thick with the scent of earth and flowers, the kind that only a funeral could bring. Yet amidst the somber atmosphere, something about the dog's stillness felt off, unnatural even. The mourners, cloaked in black, stood in small groups whispering among themselves. They had come to pay their respects to Eleanor, a kind-hearted woman who had touched many lives. The priest, Father Caldwell, stood at the head of the grave, offering words of comfort. His voice was smooth, but carried a heavy sorrow. The dog, however, did not seem to share in the communal sadness. Instead, it was alert, its ears pricked, its eyes unblinking as it gazed toward the open grave. It had not made a sound since the service began, but its unsettling silence was more noticeable than any bark or whimper. Grace, one of Eleanor's closest friends, noticed the dog first. Her heart ached as she looked at it, recalling how it had been her companion in the past. Always by her side, as loyal as they come. She had known Shadow for years. What's wrong with Shadow? She whispered to herself, but the words felt empty as they left her lips. Is something wrong? Her voice broke through the soft murmur of the gathering, drawing several glances. Father Caldwell, who had been leading the service, turned his gaze to the dog. "Oh, Shadow," he murmured, making the sign of the cross. "It's just grief. Animals mourn just like we do. He needs time." But Grace wasn't sure. There was something else. Something in the way Shadow's eyes stayed fixed on the grave, in the stillness of his posture, the way he didn't waver. She had seen dogs grieve before, but this was different. It was as if Shadow knew something none of them did. The breeze picked up slightly, causing the leaves on the nearby trees to rustle. Shadow's fur rippled in the wind, but his eyes remained fixed. He stood up now, the muscles in his back taut, and took a few cautious steps forward. His growl was soft at first, almost imperceptible against the backdrop of Father Caldwell's prayer. Grace instinctively took a step toward the dog, concern etched across her face. "Shadow," she called gently, as if trying to calm him. "What is it, boy?" But Shadow didn't respond to her. Instead, his growl deepened, vibrating through his chest. The mourners shifted uneasily, exchanging glances. The atmosphere was beginning to feel uncomfortable, the air charged with something unspoken. "Father," Grace said, her voice tight with worry. "What's going on with him?" Father Caldwell seemed momentarily unsettled. He glanced at Shadow, and then back to the casket, his brow furrowing. It's just grief," he repeated, though his voice lacked conviction. "The dog is mourning, nothing more." But Shadow wasn't settling down. If anything, his growl had grown sharper, cutting through the air, louder, more urgent. His paws clawed at the earth as he began to circle the grave. Quicker now. His gaze remained fixed on the casket, as if guarding it from something unseen. His low, steady growls reverberated among the silent gravestones, sending a wave of unease through the mourners. "I'm not so sure, Father," said Daniel, one of Eleanor's close friends who had been standing beside Grace. He stepped forward, eyes narrowing at the dog. "Something's not right here." Father Caldwell shifted uneasily. Nonsense. Just a dog in distress. But Shadow wasn't just distressed. He was agitated, erratic. His behavior was becoming more erratic. His growls almost warning. There was an intensity to it that made Daniel's stomach tighten. Maybe we should check the casket, Daniel said suddenly. His voice was calm, but there was an urgency in his eyes. What? Father Caldwell's voice cracked. Why would we… Father, Daniel interrupted. I think we need to look. The dog isn't just grieving. There's something more. Something isn't right. The air was thick now, charged with tension. The mourners, who had been whispering among themselves, began to murmur louder. Emily could feel the weight of their gazes upon her, waiting for her to speak up. She had been Eleanor's best friend, but she didn't feel as though she had control of the situation anymore. Not with the dog acting like this. Fine, Father Caldwell snapped, his voice edged with impatience. Let's put an end to this. Nonsense. His face flushed red as he strode toward the grave, signaling the workers to open the casket. The others gathered around, watching an uneasy silence. Shadow's growls continued thought. They seemed to quiet as the lid was slowly lifted. A murmur rippled through the crowd as the casket opened, and then silence. Not the solemn kind, but the sharp, stunned silence that follows when something is deeply unmistakably wrong. It took only a heartbeat for Grace to understand her. Breath caught in her throat. Daniel leaned forward, blinking in disbelief. Even Father Caldwell stepped back, his lips parting. But no words came. It wasn't Eleanor inside the casket lay. A man he looked to be in his late 40s, face pale and waxing mouth, slightly open as if caught in the middle of a final unfinished word. His dark hair was disheveled. His hands rested stiffly on his chest, fingers curled unnaturally, as if they had not found peace. In death, his eyes were wide open, staring vacant, accusing. Grace staggered a step backward, her hand flying to her chest, Shadow still tense. At her side did not bark. He didn't need to. His body was still, but every inch of him screamed. His eyes didn't leave them in the coffin, and for a moment it seemed as if the dog had known all along. This is wrong. His silence seemed to say, this is not who we buried. A chill ran through the moors like a creeping shadow. That's not Eleanor, Daniel said finally, his voice low but steady, and with that one sentence the illusion shattered. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. Eeyore is very important for us. Thank you very much. Who is this? There was a moment of stunned silence. The mourners shifted nervously, some stepping back from the open casket. Grace felt a chill run down her spine. She could feel the eyes of everyone on her as if expecting an answer. Father Caldwell, Grace asked, her voice trembling. What is this? Father Caldwell stepped back, his hand trembling as he ran it through his hair. I don't know, he stammered. I don't know who this is. Why didn't you say anything? Daniel demanded, his eyes now filled with anger and disbelief. Why didn't you tell us, Father? Caldwell looked as though he might collapse under the pressure. I didn't mean for this to happen. 1-year-old, he said weakly. I couldn't. You couldn't what? Grace cut in, her voice rising in anger. Tell us the truth, that you had replaced Eleanor's body with someone else's. The mourners stood frozen, stunned by their revelation. Shadow, still at Grace's side, seemed calmer now. The dog's posture had shifted. He no longer growled but stood quietly watching Father Caldwell. Intently, there was something in the dog's eyes, a warning perhaps, but no one could quite decipher it. Father Caldwell's shook his head, his face drawn and pale. It wasn't supposed to go this way, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Eleanor was supposed to be buried properly, but there were complications. The body that was supposed to arrive never did. It vanished without a trace. I had to do something. I thought I could make it right. The Crowd was silent, stunned into stillness even. The wind seemed to pause Shadow's eyes, narrowed as he stared at Father Caldwell. Every muscle in his body. Tense Grace's heart pounded in her chest, like a drum of war. The lies, the cover-up. The sense that something much darker had been hiding just beneath the surface all along. What else had Father Caldwell concealed? Who are you really? Daniel demanded, stepping forward, fists clenched. And why are we only now finding out that you've been hiding the truth all this time? Shadow let out a final low growl, his eyes twin daggers slicing through the priest's carefully held composure. Father Caldwell staggered back, visibly rattled, as if the full weight of the truth had just crashed down on him. I didn't have a choice, he murmured, his voice cracking. The family, Eleanor's family. They demanded a quick funeral when the body was lost in transit. I panicked. I thought no one would notice. I just wanted to spare everyone the agony of waiting, of not knowing. I never imagined it would come to this. He swallowed hard, his gaze shifting from face to face, hoping for a trace of understanding, but finding only cold silence. I didn't know what else to do, he said. I thought I could carry this burden. A chilling silence followed, his confession deeper than before. Then suddenly, the wind howled through the graveyard, rattling branches and shaking the gravestones as if nature itself was rising. In protest, Grace turned slowly toward the casket, her eyes fixed on the face of the unfamiliar corpse lying. Within her voice came out like a breath of frost. In the days that followed, the town shifted, not in the way earthquakes shatter landscapes, but like the slow, inevitable shifting of roots beneath old soil. Whispers threaded through the streets, like smoke, about the grave, about the stranger, about the dog who had known the difference all along. Grace couldn't go anywhere without someone asking quiet questions, glancing over their shoulder before leaning in. Is it true? Was the priest really hiding something? Did the dog really howl like that? She answered only what she could, which wasn't much. Daniel, too, had grown quieter, thoughtful. The fire of anger that had sparked in him that day had dulled to embers, but it still smoldered just behind his eyes. He'd taken to walking with Grace and Shadow in the evenings, tracing the edges of town where the lights didn't quite reach, and the trees whispered secrets in the wind. They weren't trying to forget. They were listening. Shadow remained ever watchful, though something in him had shifted. No longer merely a guardian, he moved with a new purpose. He would often stop suddenly on their walks, sniffing the air, staring into the trees as if hearing a voice only he could understand. Grace had learned not to question him anymore. Whatever force had once tied him to Eleanor's grave now seemed to lead him further, outward, toward something unfinished. One evening, just before the sun dipped beneath the horizon and painted the sky in shades of mourning and fire, Shadow took off, not in a frantic sprint. It was calm, certain. He looked back only once, and in his eyes, Grace saw the same truth she'd seen that night at the graveyard. Follow me. And they did. Through woods and thickets, past places long forgotten by the town, until they reached it. An old structure, nearly swallowed by the forest. Half a chapel, half a ruin. Moss-covered stones, broken glass glinting like fallen stars in the underbrush. The place pulsed with silence. Daniel stepped closer to Grace. What is this place? I've never seen it before, she said. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't quite true. The place felt familiar, as if seen once in a dream or remembered from a story told in whispers. When she was a child, Shadow moved toward a cracked stone door. It took both of them to heave it open, creaking and groaning like an ancient beast awakening. Inside, the air was cold and still. Dust danced in the shafts of light that managed to sneak through broken stained glass windows. And then they saw an old ledger, half buried beneath rubble and rot. Grace knelt, brushing it off. The leather was cracked, but the pages inside, though yellowed, were intact. Names, dates, notes in cramped handwriting. But what struck her cold was Eleanor's name, written multiple times, circled once, and followed by a single phrase. She asked too many questions. Daniel swore softly under his breath. Look, Grace whispered, turning the page. More names. People long thought to have died from natural causes. Accidents. Disappearances. All of them. Connected. This is what she found, Grace said. This is why she... Her voice caught. She didn't finish. Shadow stood at the center of the chapel now, silent again. But his eyes gleamed in the fading light. Steady. Sure. She tried to stop this, Daniel murmured. And Father Caldwell, he wasn't just covering up a lost body. He was covering this. The pieces were coming together now, forming something neither of them were ready to see, but couldn't turn away from. There was more than one buried truth in that town, and they had just unearthed the next.